to the cloud.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Splitting Smart, where Heather and I get to have candid and informative discussions with divorce and well-being professionals. I am Lila Aiken Ali, a divorcee, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split.fyi.
And I'm Heather Steer, also a divorcee, a CDFA, a divorce coach, and the other co-founder of Split.fyi. We're very excited about our day today. I'm going to just do a couple of quick housekeeping things. I will be monitoring the chat. If people have questions, you can pop in and ask those, and we'll either do it ad hoc or at the end. We will be leaving time at the end for questions. So don't worry if you want to, we'll be able to unmute people at the end and have live Q&A. So today we're in discussion with Julie Mack. Julie has spent over 20 years building the unique skills necessary to guide her clients through the maze of divorce in a way that allows them to unravel conflict and focus on building a new life. She knows that every case is unique and is a master at crafting case plans that are tailored to individual needs, instead of just following how things are traditionally done. Julie believes that all divorces have the potential to be contentious, and it's the attorney's job to be able to manage the conflict and reduce it so the parties are able to make rational and reasonable decisions in order to move forward. So she does not take on your emotions, so she can see a full 360-degree view and all of the intricacies and connections. And that way it helps to open up potential options for you in your specific case.
Mm-hmm. And as a former social service worker, Julie appreciates clients' needs for solid communication, strong advocacy, and emotional support, and efficient case management. We're going to go down that. All driving principles of her approach and teamwork ethics. So in today's chat, we will discuss selecting the right type of lawyer and find out how to best prepare yourself before you meet your divorce attorney. We will also discuss how someone can mitigate costs and working with an attorney and optimize their client-attorney relationship. Okay, without further ado, welcome, Julie.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here.
And what is the first thing that you guys want me to address? Do you have any specific questions about how to work with attorneys in divorce?
I think so. I mean, I think there's a whole gamut, right? There is finding the right attorney, and where does one start with maybe the kind of questions that you would ask your attorney, or how do you prepare to meet before an attorney? Because you've got this. A lot of people before they meet one, they have for the first time they have their consultation. And so how can you best prepare for that consult and get the most information possible in that 1 hour time period that you've got, so that you also can get a feel out of who the attorney is, what they stand for, just an idea about them. So,
and it's so scary because most people in their lives don't have to engage with an attorney, particularly under duress, under a very scary situation they're facing. And I mean, sometimes maybe you have to get an estate attorney or something, but it's not like people typically are interacting in the legal sphere. So where do people even start trying to decipher websites, reviews, or and then to Lila's point, the preparation for those meetings. You walk in and I think when I was going through my divorce, I sat down, and I have dealt with a litany of attorneys in my life, but it came to me in my personal life, I was like in puddles. I was so freaked out, even though I was capable, but I emotionally it was hard.
Well, I think it's got to be one of the hardest things when you are going through a divorce is picking who's going to help you. I mean, people are really lucky if they have a close friend or somebody in their family who's had experience and can guide them to the right attorney for them. But how many people have that? I would probably less than 10%, right? So you start looking on the internet, you start looking at websites. You can't tell from a website how somebody is going to interact with you, but you can get a good sense for some of their philosophy. I mean, for example, my website is very much tailored to how I approach family law cases, and that is that I am most concerned about where you're going in your life and protecting you while you make those decisions to get there and keeping people on track. So you're not going to find aggressive language on my site. If people, they will be able to look and see, does this person promote fighting in court, protecting you at all costs, aggressive litigation? Because if you see somebody who says, I will aggressively represent you, you can imagine you're going to have an aggressive bill as well. So it depends on what you want and what you need. And so people are often driven in their selection for their attorney by fear. When you're going through a divorce, if you don't know what the laws are, you're scared about what your future is going to look like. You're scared about money. You're scared about losing your kids. So it's only natural as human beings that we're going to go to somebody who says they'll protect us, right? They'll protect us. But family law is a it's a unique field of law, and it takes a certain kind of an attorney to be able to really guide people through that process and tone down the animosity and the conflict that can come up so often in these cases. So I think a website's a good starting point. You can look and see, what does the person say? What are their kind of taglines and so on. But then you have to have a conversation with the attorney that you're going to pick to see if you mesh well, to see if that person's going to listen to you. And what I tell my clients, or my staff tells my clients for an initial consultation, is come with a list of questions. Because you're going to be up in the middle of the night when you first start out with this divorce. You're going to be thinking about it all day. You're going to have a million things that you don't know that you're scared about. Just start jotting them on. And so that you know, and kind of come in with some ideas about, okay, where are my biggest concerns? Am I scared about money, doing businesses, and so on? My office also sends a checklist and forms to clients ahead of time to start thinking about assets, income issues. I always tell people, don't worry about filling it all out. Just start and look at it and be prepared to have a conversation about what you might have. Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels in that first session. Now, for mediations, I'll do a free 15-minute kind of Zoom call like this, or a telephone call with people, so that they can get to know me a little bit before deciding whether to hire me. And that's important, to put a face to the name, have a voice to the name, and get an idea of what that interaction is going to be like.
Yeah,
that helps.
That's huge. And when they're coming in, I spend a lot of time looking at attorney websites, and absolutely agree with you. Go read the language, make sure that it jives with you and your philosophy. You know, you don't want to go in if you think you and your spouse can be even anywhere amicable, and then suddenly hire the shark, the one with the billboard. You know, watch out for the billboard lawyers. So, and then what other kind of basic education can people get about the divorce process, so that they're not spending, you know, $400 or $500 an hour getting educated about what is mediation, litigation, you know, just the general lingo? Like, is there a benefit to getting educated about that early on?
Definitely. There's definitely a benefit to that. First of all, we need to be able to tell our clients all the options that they have when they choose a process for going through a divorce. So being able to tell the difference between a collaborative case, a mediated case, a negotiated settlement case, a litigated case. I want to be able to explain all those different options to my client in the very first meeting, sometimes the very first phone call. Often my paralegal will do that when she's talking to potential clients on the phone, the very first call, just to kind of get an idea of what they're thinking. I think what the biggest problem is that you don't know as a client what you need when you're starting with this divorce. You just want somebody to make sure you're going to be okay, right? So you really have to be able to trust that the person's going to guide you through a process. And there are lots of internet sites that you can look. You can go to a website and you can see what mediation is and so on. You can check probably a million Google sites and all sorts of websites and information about mediation and about divorce itself. But none of that's going to really sink in until you can have a short conversation with somebody who can concisely put it together for you. But at least you'll have the fundamentals. If you've read 3 articles about mediation, if you've read 3 articles about how to prepare for your meetings with an attorney, then I guarantee you first meeting is going to be more productive, because it won't be the first time you've heard the language. You know, anybody who works in a field, they have acronyms, they have basic things that they know about. I mean, I'm not a pharmaceutical person, but I know when I've got friends who work in the biotech field, they have an entire language that I cannot speak. I do not understand it. It's the same with the divorce world. And it's not just the attorneys, it's the financial professionals, the coaches, the therapists. We speak a different lingo, and we need to be able to break down that lingo for our clients and make sure it makes sense to them.
Right.
But yes, educating yourself about the process can never be a waste of time.
I mean, I think in this, what's interesting is what Heather said before, you know, people are already in fear. They're already overwhelmed. And that extra layer of, they know that they're calling a lawyer sometimes because, yes, they want the protection out of necessity. Sometimes they don't even want the divorce themselves. And they're just, you know, there's just so many different emotions going on. And I think that accessibility of that lawyer, and people are afraid, am I going to say the right thing? Is it going to be, you know, what can I say and can I say? And I think it would be really good to put them at ease about what is the craziest thing? I mean, I know people are like, well, can I ask about my dog? Can I ask about this? Can I ask about that? It's like, you really should be able to ask anything that you're concerned about, what you said earlier. So is there any too crazy of a question for you? Is there an...
There's not too crazy of a question, because you don't know what's a crazy question. I
Right.
tell people all the time when they're, I don't know if I should ask you this. I say, please ask me, because that's the only way I can tell what your concerns are, and I can answer your questions. People are coming in with very limited knowledge about this situation, about what a divorce is going to look like. So please ask, and don't be afraid to ask questions. One thing that I find, you know, when you're in the legal field, a lot of people have this impression of attorneys that they're somehow aloof, or, I don't know, smarter than other people, or all these ridiculous concepts. We're just human beings. We're the same as the person who's going to be checking you out at the grocery store when you're ringing up your groceries. We're the same as the nurse who's going to greet you at the doctor's office. I mean, we're just humans. And one of my favorite things to hear from people is when they leave my office on the first meeting and they say, oh my God, I feel so much better. I was so scared to come here. And so when people ask, what's it like to meet with me? I say, you know what, when you leave, you're going to feel like you just sat down with your sister at the kitchen table and talked about the law. That's really, don't be scared to ask your attorney questions. Don't put them up on a pedestal. We're just human beings who are supposed to be helping you through a very difficult process.
Right.
Yeah,
No, I agree.
very non-judgmentally, because you have probably heard it all. And there are, I mean, you know, every case I've worked on, there's always some, you know, unicorn involved in it of varying colors.
Oh, yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. And I've got plenty of stories. I can tell people stories sometimes in their first session. They're embarrassed. You know, they don't want to tell me that their spouse or they had an affair or 5 affairs or whatever, or somebody slept with somebody's sister, or, I mean, there's so many things. And none of us in the parenting world, I have 2 kids, they're grown. None of us are perfect parents. So don't come in with the expectation that you've got to be perfect and you have to hide things from your attorney or put your best face forward. We want to see you at your worst so that we can help you be your best.
Right. And I think that there shouldn't be any shame in that, and especially with your attorney. And in fact, it makes your job probably a bit easier if they're straightforward and telling you like it is. In fact, that's a good segue into, okay, so now you're working with a client, and what would be the best way for your client, or any client of a lawyer, would to mitigate the costs, you know, just to figure out a way to have a relationship with a lawyer that's so not effective for either party. Let's put it that way.
For both sides.
Yeah.
You know, it's really difficult because we've got a couple of things that are going on whenever we're dealing with family law cases. The first thing is, we're trained as attorneys in law school to pick up the sword and be a champion for our clients. But in divorce, that's not always the best solution. Sometimes we need to not pick up the sword. We need to just pick up the phone and have a conversation with another attorney or with our clients or whoever is going to be involved. one of the things that I find most frustrating, and I think is the number one complaint among family law litigants, people who are hiring attorneys over the years, this is what I've heard and heard numerous seminars on it. You don't know what's going on in your case. You don't understand why things are costing so much. You don't understand why your attorney is doing certain things. And so I think it's very, very important that if your attorney is not telling you what your options are and what the different cost benefit analysis is, then you have to be prepared to ask for that. So let's say, I've got a case right now where we're trying to negotiate temporary support. We have an agreement that you're going to be retroactive to a certain date. Well, it's going to cost a lot of money for us to file an RFO, to file a motion with the court. It costs extra paperwork, there's filing fees, and then there's a lot more preparation involved in a hearing than there is for negotiating something. We're about $1,000 apart on that issue. And I put an email together to my clients when we're in this kind of thing, and I say, okay, here's where you're different in your numbers. This is how much I think it's going to cost you to go to court on this issue. If you win, you're still out those attorney's fees. If we meet in the middle, you're going to be whole. If you go to court and lose, you're going to be out the fees and that extra money. Let's meet in the middle, because frankly, the only people who gain by not settling and meeting in the middle are the attorneys who get paid. So once I put it like that to my clients, then they can make an informed choice, knowing how much it's going to cost, what the benefits are. And that is a conversation that I just don't hear happening with a lot of my colleagues. And I think that is imperative. People have the right to know, if I choose option A, B, or C, what's my best case scenario? What's my worst case scenario? What's it going to cost, and how long is it going to take? Without that part of the conversation, you don't know what decision to make. And if attorney's not telling you that, then this is your attorney. They are working for you. You have a right to ask and say, okay, what are my other options? How much is that going to cost me? How long is it going to take? And I think once you have that kind of information and have the ability to have those conversations with your attorney, it makes it easier for the attorney, because they know they want to help you make the best choice, and that you're going to be an informed client who's going to be looking at the costs involved and making decisions based on not just what's best for what's going to be expensive and what's going to be the most aggressive action, but what's going to really make sense for you.
Exactly. Also, I mean, by continuing the fight and not gaining anything out of it is just soul destroying. I mean, it just puts you in a worse position. So I think thank you for sharing that, because I think that isn't something that happens a lot. And it's such an easy tweak, and it's such an easy way between a client and attorney relationship just to create calm. Because when you can't see the wood through the trees, when you can't see it and you are so overwhelmed by your divorce, by having those two options or three options, whatever it is, just clearly is laid out in front of you, it's like, oh, then it doesn't become the fight anymore. And that's the problem, because otherwise you perpetuate and you're constantly in a fight, right? Oh, I want this, but I want this. So I'm going to go for this 1,000 extra or whatever it is, if you're really bringing it and breaking it down to that molecular level. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great insight, I think, for anyone. And
I think the idea too, that you're working for the client. So as the person going through divorce, that I think a lot of people lose sight of is, and I think to your point earlier, we tend to be, put attorneys on pedestals and think they're smarter, think they're kind of there as a judge and a director in your case, that relationship needs to be shifted, and that the person going through divorce needs to understand that they're paying for a service. And if you're not getting information exchange and those types of scenarios played out to you, or you went in and you hired an attorney and it turns out over 6 or 8 meetings, it's not the right fit. Your communication style is different. The vibe is weird. You don't feel like you're in control. It's okay to cut bait. I mean, and I find that with people that are scared. They're like, I'm going to lose ground. I'm going to have to redo. I'm going to have to. And I mean, I don't know, Julie, in your experience, but I typically one side or the other in almost every case switches attorneys at some point. Like it just happens because people chose the wrong person, or people go out, by the way, and hire non-family law attorneys. And which always, I'm like, that person's a criminal law attorney. That's the wrong fit. Like, it's a different court system.
But they're my brother's best friend and they're going to give me a deal.
Right.
Yes, that deal will cost you more in a lot of ways. So, I mean, what do you find when people, are switching? What do you look out for? And I think too, people, clients can be overly irrational and fire attorneys for, reasons that probably aren't in their best interest. But I do see that it's okay to change.
So I'll tell you how I deal with that, because you do have to be careful. You don't want to be the person who's constantly changing attorneys, but one change is not going to hurt you in a case. What I help people look at when they call me and say, I don't really know what's going on in my case, I don't understand what's happening, I want a second opinion, or I may want to hire you over. So first I will look at who is the attorney on the case, because a lot of times if I know who they are and I know they're very good attorneys, I think, it's just something that the client doesn't understand. I'm sure this person's doing a good job. So I'll talk about it, look at what's happened in the case, look at a couple of the documents, and see how much the client's actually understanding about what's going on. And about half the time that I end up speaking with those clients, instead of having them hire me, I will say, here's a list of questions to go ask your attorney, and here's how I think you can communicate better with them, and they're going to do a good job. Half of the time I say, oh yeah, you need to change, and here's what I could offer that's different. And as long as it's not repetitive, there are people who they don't like what happened in court. They blame their attorney, they go hire somebody else, or this person wasn't aggressive enough, or all sorts of nonsense that really makes you look like a repeated litigant that could be a problem. But that's 1 out of 100, guys. It's really, you have a right to be represented by somebody who you feel is going to be the best for you. And this is what I also tell people. I say, if you have a cancer diagnosis and you go to the hospital and you meet with an oncologist and they give you a treatment plan, I can't imagine that any oncologist would be offended by that person going and getting a second opinion. It's your damn life, right? Like, it is your life. You go and you get an opinion before you jump into major surgery. So why would you not get a second opinion if you have a gut feeling that something's not happening in your divorce the right way? I don't know why we look at that differently than we would in a medical situation.
Exactly.
Or, my God, you even get 2 bids if you're going to get a roof on your house, right?
Yeah.
So
well, I always say the beauty parade needs to happen. Like, I am, I know it's not everybody can afford meeting or having a consult with different various lawyers, but it is almost worth at least meeting with 2 if you can, rather than just 1 and going for it, because you really need to understand that personality, because it is the person who's going to take care of you in one aspect. And that kind of goes back to, that's one aspect of it. And, if especially they're understanding that relationship, then it can be an optimized relationship, because the lawyer is going to represent me in a certain way and is going to do the best for me that I need legally. However, I know this is a good time to talk about the emotional support because I do know, and I did this myself, and I've got clients who do this, is, I would forward my ex's emails to my lawyer right away without even looking at it, because I was too nervous to open it in my inbox. I soon found out about a month later when I got the bill not to do that anymore. And also, that's not the right person I should have been doing that for. And if I was scared to open that email, then I should have just forwarded it to a friend or somebody else before and just sit with it, or open it when I was ready, or somebody was with me, or, I learned trial and error of how to figure out how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that scenario? Like, kind of the do's and don'ts.
I think it's important to remember that when you're going through a divorce and you hire an attorney, you're hiring a service. And the service that a lawyer provides to you is to give legal advice. I mean, frankly, that's the bottom line, right? You're going through a legal process. We need to give legal advice. we get clouded because as human beings, we want our clients to be happy. We want our clients to feel like they're being represented and taken care of. So when they send us a zillion emails for us to read and we're like, oh, I know your husband or your wife, they're so horrible. I'm so sorry. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And they get all caught up in a whole bunch of nonsense. Doesn't do you any good. So the best thing that you can do is realize that your attorney is going to be there for legal advice. Now, we're supposed to be compassionate also. We're supposed to understand the emotional grief and dread and fear and so on that our clients are going through. But you also need to realize we're not the ones most equipped to help you through that process. So you can do a couple things. I always tell people, have a friend that you can call for just the basic stuff like, I hate my husband, he's driving me crazy, he's such a jerk. Okay, that's your friend. But your friend's going to get tired of hearing that as well. Then they're going to say, do something about it. I'm still not the person to call, although I do have conversations all the time with clients about how to set boundaries with their ex-spouses, all those things. And then when I'm done with that conversation, I know I've been helpful, but I'm like, your therapist could have done that for half the price. So it's really important to have an emotional support group. Going to group meetings, that's definitely a lower cost. You go to a group session every single week. You can bitch about your spouse, you can bitch about your lawyer, you can do all sorts of things, and you're going to get recommendations from people who have been through it. And then you go to your therapist and you get advice on really how to react differently or how to learn to respond to your spouse instead of reacting out of fear. Those are therapist world things. We're attorneys. We're going to tell you how to get through the legal process. So don't expect the attorney to have the same emotional understanding and the ability to listen to you for hours on end. It's not helping you on your case.
No.
It's not getting you anywhere forward on your case, but that bill is ticking, 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 and it's taking our attention away from the things that we actually can be doing to move your case forward. So having an emotional support system outside of your lawyer is key. And I think groups where you can go on an online forum like yours or meet with people who are going through it, that could cut a quarter off your attorney's fees bill just by having that.
I know.
So I think those are all helpful. And I wish that we were all trained to be the best therapists in the world. I wish that I could do that for all of my clients, but that's not my primary skill set. I went to law school.
Right. Well, and also you got to do what you're meant to do. And, and that's kind of fighting their corner for their corner. And so it's hard to be a therapist and that because it gets skewed. I mean, the whole relationship becomes completely. And I think part of it, and I really do believe this, I think that also there is a process that every individual goes through. They kind of want to win their lawyer over, right? They're kind of like, but look at my situation and look at me and feel bad for me. And it's funny because so they spend all this time trying to prove that their ex is X, Y, and Z, or they're right and their other person is wrong, which actually they don't need to even spend time doing that at the end of the day because you're representing them. You care for their well-being and their benefit, but you don't need to be hearing every little, well, he did this and she did that and he said this and da-da, because that just takes away from, unless it's permanent to the case, of course, but
Of course, but then we should be able to piece out what's relevant to the case and what's not, and know how to, like, when our clients are going on and on, well, we can put a stop to it and say, I think that might be really an important thing for you to talk about with your therapist, but it's not anything that's going to be helpful in your case. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to hear about that. Sometimes I'll tell people, you know what, you can just send all that information to me in an email. I'll probably read it in 2 minutes and you'll get charged for a 0.1 instead of calling me for a half hour or an hour and talking about it.
Exactly.
I can skim an email pretty quickly, but I can't always talk to a client for a minute. I mean, that's just hard to do. So again, it's about balancing what our clients need and making sure that they have the right resources. And so I know when I'm talking to a client who is, I don't want to say misusing my office and my staff for emotional support, because it's not misusing, it's not knowing what help we're best for and what help they can get other places. So we try to keep a referral list of where people can go to get that kind of assistance and to know that we do care. And that's why we're sending you to somebody who can better help you with those issues. It's just like a business valuation. I'm a family law attorney. I don't do business valuations myself. I can understand them. I can litigate them. I can explain them to you when they're done, but I'm not going to crunch the numbers in the back and write the report. Nobody would expect me to do that. So nobody's going to expect me to be the one who helps you through the primary parts of your grief and transition process in your own emotional state. I just have to be able to hold you through that process while you're getting that help someplace else and making sure that it's being taken care of.
Fantastic.
One of the things that I love, and I know this might sound corny to some of the people that are listening to this, and certainly to a lot of my colleagues, it sounds corny. But if you've ever looked at transformation, I mean, I've been divorced myself, and even being a divorce attorney, I know when you go through it yourself, it's different. And it is a life-changing event for many, many, many reasons. And a lot of people talk about transformation, and they talk about, like the caterpillar to a butterfly story, right? The caterpillar emerging as a butterfly at the end. What they don't talk about is that when that caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, they are turned into mush, gooey mush. And for a lot of my clients going through divorce, they're not a caterpillar and they're not a butterfly. They are a gooey pile of mush.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be the chrysalis that just holds that together until they can get out of it and go forward and become that butterfly. And I know that's corny, but I really feel that way. Like it's my job, it's our job to just hold that layer, that boundary around you while you're doing all of the inner work that you have to do to get through it. We're just going to focus on the legal stuff and keep you moving forward and keeping you making decisions that are on track, so you've got the best life possible when you're emerge on the other side of this.
Yes, because people.
So sorry for my minute of doing that, but I really feel like it's
at all. I love that, actually. I think that it's such a brilliant visual for me because I'm a visual person. It's exactly it. I mean, I always say, Heather and I talk about this a lot. Our clients, a lot of them were either ex-CEOs or head of HR and, prominent roles in their career. Yet when they went through a divorce or going through a divorce, mush. Like they couldn't even move forward, backwards, sideways, completely stuck. So that was an amazing visual. Thank you for that.
No, it's true.
Welcome to divorce, right?
Right.
We love it. It's a great space actually to work in, to be able to help people. And I loved what you said earlier, where it is so powerful at the end of those meetings when the client does feel better. They're like, oh, I went in and I had this great meeting, and you feel like you've moved forward. And I think as you move forward, you get more and more empowered. Those baby steps forward in the process are huge, and not wanting. One thing I wanted to touch on is I think you and I have had this conversation before, is there's a natural conflict in the concept of charging hourly and wanting to get people moving forward and moving on. And so, and that goes back to managing your bill and managing, understanding the process and taking ownership of that. So also, what sorts of expectations in communication and structure do you set with your clients? Like some people are better verbally, some people are better, email, some people are better, do you have discussions about that with your clients? What works best for them?
Sometimes I do. It's not the standard, because I can usually get a pretty good feeling in my first meeting with somebody how they interact with me and what they're taking in by the answers to questions or the questions that they ask me, and then their follow-up. I can find when there's problems also really quickly. Like I've got some clients who I know I've told them on the phone 3 or 4 times the same thing and they're not listening. So I make sure to put everything in writing then. Some people don't hear it. They just don't. I'm a visual learner, so you telling me something 5 times, I'm going to probably pick it up, but if I see it once, it's down in my head forever. So I need to be able to talk to people about that if I think there's a problem. So again, usually I can tell there's not, but when there is, I'll ask, how do you like to get this information? And sometimes I'll have people bring a family member or a friend to the meeting. I have to give the disclosures about what's confidential and what's not, but sometimes people need another set of ears because they're not hearing. They just can't. It's not that they're unable to, but whatever their fear is and their anxiety about the process is actually blocking the brain's ability to take in information and process it. It's just a neurological concept. It's nothing bad about a person, nothing judgmental. But when you're in fight or flight mode or you're really scared, your brain shuts down in a lot of reasonable and rational decision-making processes. So if you can bring somebody, or I've had somebody say, can I record this meeting? I'm like, I don't care, go ahead, record the meeting. They want to be able to listen to it later, it's fine. Or somebody just come and take notes or help them ask questions. I have no problem with that. I don't care if somebody brings a village of people, whatever it takes to make them feel comfortable and get their questions answered.
I love, like, so there's medical advocates, going back to your analogy earlier about, cancer, someone who has cancer and they're diagnosed. I mean, all the person that just got diagnosed is thinking is, oh my God, I've got cancer, I've got cancer, I've got cancer, I've got cancer, right? Like, oh my God, I'm getting divorced, I'm getting divorced, I'm getting divorced. Like, you really can't. Like, I have sat, I do this with clients. I will sit in attorney meeting, mediation, and be that second set of ears. And then they'll call me later and they're like, hey, do you remember what was said about this, this, and this? Or, and I think people are afraid to do that, or don't realize that's an option. And, or they're embarrassed, they don't want people to know what's really going on in their inner world. So if you call someone like a divorce coach or a CDFA or someone else that can come in and do that with you, I mean, it's a little bit more expensive, but it will save you money and sanity. And it's someone who it's like your emotional support person. It's like bringing in, the therapy dog, but it's a human. So, and particularly in mediation settings, I find not bringing in a family member that causes the other party to be lit up, right? So it's someone who's independent and neutral from your relationship world. Then it's, it's just the other professional that's in the room with the attorney and yourself can be helpful as well. So
I also think that there's a certain element. Sorry, there's a certain element which I really want to touch on, is that there not only is your brain mush and you're in that, part of your life that you just can't even make a decision or understand or comprehend, but there are also times that you hear, when you do hear, you are hearing something very different than what is being presented. And I've heard many times, like, my lawyer doesn't even like me. What do you mean? Well, why are the things that make you think that? Oh, because they said I can't do this and it would be really difficult to do that. I'm like, well, that doesn't mean they don't like you. So having that other person to sit there and go, no, I didn't hear that. And no, I did not get, just have that sounded mind, because what you're hearing, you're so emotional that literally anybody could say one little thing to you and you feel like that person's attacking you. That's a lot of times because you're so susceptible to that. So when you're in, especially with the jargon, like you said, I mean, lawyers have their own jargon, their own way of speaking because they've been trained that way, where the layman's terms isn't always used. And plus there's a plethora of dictionary words of, law of divorce dictionary that you're just like, what does that mean? So you're lost in that. So you're explaining to me, one aspect of divorce and I'm trying to comprehend it and you're on to the next one. I'm like, what? So having that person to really be like, yeah, no, this is what I got. I took these notes. We recorded it. I did not feel that way, is gold dust. Yeah. And that can happen is amazing. I don't think people know that they can do that.
Yep.
I work with one of the divorce financial planners that I work with sometimes. She calls herself a translator. So she says, I can translate what you're saying and what happens in divorce world to people who don't live in divorce world. Or just entered divorce world. So that's a translation process. And you don't want to do that at $500 an hour.
No. And your IQ drops by about 25 points when you're operating in this space through divorce. There's studies out there that while you're going through this grief cycle and bouncing between reptilian brain and back, there is a significant deficit in where you would normally operate to where you're operating while you're going, through this process. I mean, how I actually got turned on to this industry and deciding to work in it was, I asked my attorney at the end of my own divorce, who could I have called? Because I would call him. Like, I was like, you need to come to mediation with me today. I don't want to go alone. Like, and some days I went alone, but then So no, I paid a lot for him to sit in meetings, and it wasn't like a lot of legal stuff. It was, stuff like he didn't really probably need to be there those days, but in some days he did, but you just needed someone who would sit there with you. I could have done it for much cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's ways, for example, when you're going through mediation and you are scared to do it by yourself, I consult a lot of people through mediation where I'm representing them, but really behind the scenes, I'm not there at mediation with them. I'm just helping them through it. And so I can guide them and help them feel empowered enough to make like a negotiation strategy for them. They can come prepared with all of the tools so that they can go take care of it themselves. And sometimes I remind them, I'm like, I know they'll tell me, I'm too scared, I can't do it, this and that. And usually I know the mediator, so I can tell them some things about the mediator that makes them feel a little assured. And then I can help them feel prepared and say, think of how good it's going to feel when you sit there with your husband or your wife and you're able to voice your wants and what you need out of this divorce, and you get some of those things. Like it's going to feel really good, and the mediator is going to help you do it, and you don't need me there, and you're not going to sign up for anything without me reviewing it anyways, so you're okay. Just try it. And the feeling that I get when clients call me back and say, we came to a full agreement, I just want you to review it, everything went well, I feel so good. I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted. More than me going there and saving the day.
Right. That's so great. It's success stories are, that's brilliant, especially in mediation. So, because I think a lot of people have that intention, like, oh, we just want to mediate, we're going to be amicable. And then it turns into a full blown, completely litigated process. And so that when there is a success story, I think that is something that you just touched on is really brilliant, because I think that when two people feel that they're going into negotiations with a mediator without maybe somebody helping them on both sides or one side, then their problem always remains. And I don't know how they can communicate their needs and wants and desires in an effective way. And I know I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have known where to start. I'd even how to position myself of what I wanted to do. So that's a brilliant idea for people to do.
It's just helpful. It's just part of the job. We're supposed to be helping our clients through this process in whatever process they choose. That's our job.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know that sounds simple, but it just really is.
No, it's better to sound simple than complicated. And to be honest with you, I think the people who go through these situations always complicate things anyway, because our mind is complicating things. Everything around us is so complicated, and there's no right or wrong. It's just, that's the process of human beings, how we're processing everything. So again, having this mindset, and we're just hoping that people can understand that relationship a lot more, get less scared of it. You can only help somebody as much as they tell you what they want as well. So you can't tell them, right, you should want this and you should want that. No, they need to. And that's where, coaching, Heather and I, we do a lot of that, is that, all right, let's figure out what you do really want. Like, what is that? Because, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time. A lot of people come to you and they're like, I want the house. I never want to leave that house. That's the number one thing, right? It's everybody's, I want that house. I want to live in there. That's where my kids grew up, or that's where the kids are growing up. And it's like, right, let's just break this down. Like, you're headstrong, like, is it really what you want? And sometimes when the marriage breaks down in a very nasty way, and either the husband or the wife is out of the house, they realize they don't actually want to be in that house, because it's just, there's bad juice all over it. So,
what we have to look at is anybody who's practicing in this field, your roles, my role, we're helping people through a very, very difficult time, and they're not going to know what their needs are. They're not going to even be able to understand what's driving what they're saying their desires are. So one of the things that's important for attorneys to do, I'm sure you guys both do this when you're working with clients, are what are your goals? Let's not talk about, don't come in my office and give me a list of assets and debts that you have. And then I can say, oh, you get half of this, he gets half of this, and go your own way. I want to know, where do you want to be next month, in a year, in 10 years? And then what pieces of of this case. Like, I'm a puzzle addict. I love puzzles. So I want you to give me a ton of pieces. Just give me pieces. A little bit of the 401k, a little bit of a kid needs to go to college, a little bit of this problem, whatever. We take them all, lay them all out, say, how are we going to put these pieces together in a way that allows you to move forward with a new life? So what does that picture look like? If it's a jigsaw puzzle and I've got all these puzzle pieces, I can't even start putting them together unless I know what that picture is going to look like. So we're going to look at that picture. Is it attainable? Can we do that? What are the likelihood of that? Okay, if it's not 100% attainable, is it 80% attainable? What's most important? Is it most important for you to keep that house? Or is it most important for you to have a house and a secure place to live with your child that might not be that one? So when you break it down like that and you help people stay focused on their goals, what also is good about that is when they call you 3 months down the road and everything's falling apart and they're pissed at their spouse and something's happening, I can say, okay, remember when you told me what your goal was? These 3 things that you're talking about, only one of them is going to help get you towards your goals. So we're going to focus on that. And these other 2, go talk to your friend, go talk to your therapist. None of that's going to get you to your goal. We're focused on your goal.
Right.
So those are important conversations to have with an attorney as well. And your attorney should be asking you what your goal is. And your goal cannot be, I want to kill my ex-spouse. I want to bury him. I want everything that I'm entitled to. I want blah, 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 blah. No, what does that mean? Have the conversation and why. And then we can decide, can we get you there?
I love that. Yeah. I mean, you use the word goals. I use the word vision, but it's the same. And I think it's 100%. It's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 3 years, whatever it is that you can envision and where you want to be. And I think that is really important. I think that's like I said, I don't think that people think that they can actually have those kind of conversations with their lawyer. So this is gold dust, for people who are listening to understand that that is the kind of conversation you should be having, because that will set the bar of what you want and what you want to get out of there, and also lessen the fight. Because if you're stuck on something,
it will. It doesn't make any sense. Sorry. I was gonna say, it doesn't make any sense to, like every other attorney, if you're an estate planning attorney, your clients come to you, this is my goal. I want to leave the dog to Susie, and I want to make sure my kids have this asset, and I want to make sure my spouse gets this. It's all about goals. If I hire a business attorney, I have a startup, I need a business plan. I have this goal to take this company to here and there. So why in family law would it be any different that you're hiring an attorney to help you obtain a goal, and your attorney is supposed to help you decide what that goal is going to be? It's ridiculous that all of my colleagues who do every other kind of law can plan and set goals and set a roadmap for their clients, and family law attorneys can't. That's silly.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the time is because they're just trying to put out fires. But I think if you can stay ahead of the game and actually have these kind of conversation and really remind the client, like you said, well, actually, this is what you started off with this. Why are you steering off the path? Helps a lot. It helps a lot.
Well, and it helps you choose your battles and choose, when to sort of leave something on the table and what you want to fight for. And I mean, I think that's really important. Like, I think at the end of my case, my attorney was like, he suddenly saw me get really worked up about something. And he goes, this is a big deal to you. And I'm like, this is the biggest deal to me. So, and he's like, oh, he goes, all right. He goes, I'm coming in, he came in, with his sword. And, that was the one, I was like, this is the one critical path thing. And that's when he stepped in and did exactly what I needed him to do. So I think that's important that to communicate that. And I think I missed that. I probably should have communicated that earlier in my process, but that's very powerful to be able to communicate those things to your attorney and have them not pushing you, and because he was very careful about not pushing me into the fights that I didn't want to be in. So, and this one I was like, no, this is my fight. I want to fight for this. And he was there to support me to do it. So I think, that message is critical. And that comes down to managing, going back to the earlier discussion of these attorneys are working for you as the person going through the divorce, and you need to keep sight of that as the client. So what other tips? Because we are kind of starting to get to our wrap up point. And so, Julie, I don't know if we covered all of the your amazing insights on this topic. We're looking forward to, as a sneak peek, we are going to have her back for a different discussion for transitioning and managing contracts in different relationships, which I'm very excited about as well. So, but on this topic.
Well, I think it's just, if people are listening and they're wondering, what did I learn today about working with an attorney? It's a couple major points. And the first one is, you're in control. You are paying for the service and you have a right to be able to guide the work that your attorney does. So ask questions. Don't just ask questions about the law, ask questions about the process, ask questions about your options. When your attorney says, we have to do this, you say, do I have any other options? What would be the benefits or the disadvantages of doing or not doing that? Is there a tier 2 that we can do? Ask the questions. And if your attorney can't answer those questions, you shouldn't be with that attorney. It's our job to answer the questions and give you options in dealing with your divorce in your life.
Yeah,
Great takeaway. 100%. And don't be afraid of them. 100%. And look how nice and sweet they are.
Please do not be. You know, well, listen, we all know how to be aggressive and assertive when we need to be. I've litigated tons of court cases. I've been in court. I've had to have those battles, but that's not the majority. And that's not the way we work with our own clients. We're supposed to be there for their needs, not ours, for the services that they need us to render to them.
Exactly. Amen. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for having this conversation with us and taking the time. I really enjoyed it, by the way. Honestly, I wish I would have listened to this when I was going through the divorce. I could have used it. I could have used this conversation. So thank you so much. And we look forward to having you back.
Yes, thank you.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, no, this was fantastic.
You gotta stop.
Yeah, we can stop.